Three people have been executed in the month of August. Arthur Lee Burton, Texas, August 7. In Houston, Texas, on July 29, 1997, Burton approached a white woman jogging through her neighborhood. He dragged her into a forested area nearby and tried to assay her. The victim started to scream when she heard the witness getting closer. Burton killed her by strangling her with her own shoelaces. That day, just after 7 p.m., Nancy Edelman left the house for a little jog along the bayou that was close to her residence. Sharon Leyland was watching her kids play by some large machinery by the bayou at about 7:20 p.m. She was astonished to turn around and see a man on a bicycle who appeared to be filthy and angry standing very near her. Leyland greeted him, but all the man did was shoot her a cold stare. The meeting made Leyland feel intimidated, so she called her kids and headed home. Leyland observed Edelman walking down the bayou as she was calling her kids. Afterwards, Leyland recognized the man riding the bicycle as Burton. The following morning, the police found Edelman's body in a 3 to 4 foot deep hole in a densely forested region off the jogging track by the bayou. The authorities assumed she had been assayed since her underwear had been taken off and thrown some distance from the body. Edelman's body seemed as though she had been severely battered. Nancy Edelman, who was the oldest of 3 children and originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, loved theater and poetry. Her daughter claims that her mother started writing poetry when she was 11 years old and published collections all through her life. Before relocating to Houston in the late 1970s, she earned a Master of Fine Arts from the University of Minnesota and a degree in drama from Louisiana State University. She soon married Mark Edelman, her spouse of 18 years, and the two went on to have 3 children. Burton originally denied ever riding his bicycle near the swamp and denied killing Edelman when Deputy Sheriff Benjamin Beal contacted him. After being presented with discrepancies in the evidence he had gathered, Burton eventually admitted to the crime. He acknowledged assaulting a jogger, pulling her into the woods and strangling her until she passed out in a written statement. He then undressed her and made an attempt at assaying her. He choked her once more and pulled her into a hole when she came to and started screaming. He went back and used her own shoelace to choke the jogger after spotting someone else strolling in the area. Together with the crime's details, the state produced proof that when Burton was 18 in 1988, he had taken part in 39 car and outbuilding break-ins in a single month. Along with his other co-defendants, he had stolen firearms, radios, fishing gear, calculators, and other stuff. Occasionally, the offenders would simply rummage through any papers in the car before destroying the inside. They would not steal anything. During his testimony, Burton's brother acknowledged that while Burton was a resident of Arkansas, he sold cocaine and used Mary Jane. According to Burton's attorneys, 2 experts' reports demonstrated that the man exhibited low scores on tests of learning, reasoning, comprehending complex ideas, problem-solving, and suggestibility, all of which are examples of significant limitations in intellectual functioning. They claimed that because of the compelling evidence of his intellectual handicap, he was categorically exempt from the death penalty. The prosecution, however, maintained that Burton had not previously asserted any intellectual handicap and had only done so 8 days prior to his planned execution. Burton's appeal for a stay of execution was denied by lower courts, and hours before the injection time, the U.S. Supreme Court denied his defense motion to intercede. Burton was the 11th prisoner executed in the United States and the 3rd inmate executed in Texas this year. On August 7 at 6:47 p.m. local time, Arthur Lee Burton, 54 years old, was declared dead following a fatal injection at the state penitentiary in Huntsville. Burton's final statement was the following: "I want to say thank you to all of the people who support me and pray for me. For those of you I know and do not know, thank you for your support and prayers. 2727 and a full circle to all of the guys at the Polonsky unit. I love you guys. Bird is going home. To all the people I have hurt and caused pain, I wish we didn't have to be here at this moment, but I want you to know that I am sorry for putting you all through this and my family. I'm not better than anyone. I hope that I find peace, and y'all can too. Warden, I'm good." Since Texas no longer grants special meal requests, Burton was offered whatever was on the menu that day for all the prisoners. Taberon Dave Honey, Utah, August 8. The U.S. state of Utah executed Hony for the 1998 murder and essay of Claudia Ben, the mother of his ex-girlfriend. Since Ronnie Lee Gardner was put to death in June 2010, he was the first person to receive the lethal injection in Utah in more than 14 years. Hony was a member of the Hopi tribe of Native Americans. He claimed to have gotten his first taste of alcohol at the age of 5. His lawyers claimed in a subsequent appeal that he was poor as a child and had severe brain injuries. Claudia Marie Ben, 49, was a member of the Paiute Indian tribe in Utah and the murder victim. She was regarded as a cornerstone of her community by her family. Along with taking care of her family, she worked as a substance abuse counselor. Carol Pickavit, with whom Hony had a relationship from about 1995 to 1998, was one of her daughters. The two had a daughter together. Pickavit moved in with her mother after splitting up with Hony. On the evening of July 9, 1998, Hony called Pickavit and demanded that she come see him right away. If she disobeyed, he threatened to kill multiple members of her family. Pickavit wasn't home when the murder occurred since she had left for work. A few hours later, Hony burst through a sliding glass door to gain entry into the Cedar City, Utah home Pickavit shared with her mother, Claudia Marie Ben. Ben tried using a kitchen knife as self-defense. Hony overpowered her and used the knife to strike her, severing her throat 4 times, deep enough to scar her backbone. Police arrived at Ben's home early the following morning in response to a 911 call from one of her neighbors. They discovered a shattered window and Ben's partially nude and disfigured body with deep stab wounds to her private parts. After discovering Hony in Ben's garage and seeing blood smears on his fingerprints, they took him into custody. Hony admitted to stabbing her when he was being arrested. Ben's 3 little granddaughters were found smeared in blood in the same house by the responding officers. Soon after Ben's death, Hony had essayed one of the kids. He mentioned his childhood poverty and maltreatment in a petition for clemency he filed on June 18, 2024. It was announced on June 24 that Hony's legal representative had submitted many petitioning papers to stay his execution. Hony appeared before Utah's parole board 2 days prior to his execution in order to ask for a reprieve. During the hearing, Hony admitted to being a monster and expressed regret for killing Ben. "The one thing that has sustained me over the years is my certainty that this would never occur if I were in a sound mental state. I don't offer any justifications." The parole board turned down Hony's plea. His last meal was a cheeseburger, French fries, and a milkshake. Hony's execution took place at midnight on August 8, 2024. In his last statement, he said, "From the start, it's been, if it needs to be done for the victims' families to heal, let's do this. If they tell you you can't change, don't listen to them. To all my brothers and sisters here, continue to change. I love you all. Take care." A dose of pentobarbital was administered at 12:04 a.m., and officials administered a second dose at 12:13 a.m. He flatlined at 12:21 a.m., at which point his family members were allowed to enter the execution chamber and perform a spiritual ceremony over his body. A medical examiner officially pronounced him dead at 12:25 a.m. Loran Kenstley Cole, Florida, August 29. On February 18, 1994, Cole was found guilty of murdering John Edwards and given the death penalty. John Edwards and his sister Pam went camping in the Ocala National Forest over the course of the weekend on Friday, February 18, 1994. Loran Cole came by and introduced himself as Kevin and helped them settle in as they were setting up camp in the Hopkins Prairie. Later that evening, Cole and William Paul, who was not related to Cole, returned to the Edwards' campsite. Cole introduced William Paul as his brother. The four made the choice to go for a walk after spending time by the campfire. Cole attacked Pam while she was on the move, knocking her to the ground, striking her in the head, and handcuffing her. John and Paul started to argue at the same time. Paul was holding a walking stick when John grabbed it and started beating him with it. Cole helped Paul in restraining John and placed him close to his sister on the ground while handcuffing Pam. All John could do was apologize to his sister for putting her in such a risky predicament while Cole and Paul were robbing the siblings. Paul moved Pam up the trail and Cole stayed behind with John and trashed him for earlier assaulting his brother with a walking stick. Cole soon joined Paul and Pam and advised them to wait until John fell asleep before leaving. After that, Cole returned to the injured John and cut off his throat while claiming to Pam that he was merely removing John from the trail and tying him up. John died from several skull fractures and a sliced throat. He was just 18 years old. Pam was returned to the campsite by Cole and Paul, where Cole essayed her. The following day, Cole assured Pam that John was fine while making the pretense that he was going to check on him. Pam was then assaulted again by Cole, who then tied her between two trees. Early on Sunday morning, Pam was able to free herself from the bonds. She initially stayed put out of concern for her brother's safety, but she ultimately hailed down a driver who drove her to call the police. Pam gave police a comprehensive description of Cole and Paul, which allowed officers to recognize them and apprehend them. William Paul was sentenced to life on all charges. Cole, 57, was executed by lethal injection on August 29 and pronounced dead at 6:15 p.m. at the Florida State Prison in Rayford. Cole was asked if he had any final words while being strapped to a gurney with leather bindings and a paper sheet covering his neck. Cole said, "No, sir," while gazing up at the ceiling. He looked back at those in the gallery who had gathered to watch his last minutes, nodded slightly, and then laid back down. At 6:03 p.m., Cole received the first of 3 injections. Following his sedation, he was rendered immobile by a second medication, and his heart was stopped by a third and final injection. After taking a few deep, difficult breaths, Cole's body jolted and trembled before becoming motionless. A guard shook Cole's shoulders firmly and patted his eyelids, calling him. He was lying with his mouth hanging open and his eyes closed. He passed away in 12 minutes. Cole's last meal was pizza, M&Ms, ice cream, and a soda. Timothy and Victoria Edwards, his victim's parents, said the following: "Mr. Cole has been granted 30 years of life in Florida State Prison. During those 30 years, he has been free to read books, study, eat proper meals, sleep in a bed, get medical care, bathe and exercise, receive visitors, and to simply exist. This is something he brutally took from our son, life. That cannot be undone." While we empathize with the victims' families, we often tend to forget that the inmates also have family members, and for them too, it's a tragedy to go through this. Cole had a 36-year-old son, Ryan, who felt like his father's punishment and execution were a nightmare. This is what he had to say: "Saying goodbye to my dad was the hardest thing I've ever done. I am being punished for something that I believe now is something my dad didn't even do. They want somebody to blame in order to give somebody else peace, but they are taking peace from somebody else." For a long time, Cole said he was not the one that committed the murder and that his friend was actually the one that did it. There are 5 executions scheduled for the month of September. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.